What happens when Hollywood's ultimate underdog squares off against late-night TV's most infamous provocateur? What began as a routine promotional stop quickly unraveled into one of the most uncomfortable, and one A-list legend walked off the set. The audience sat stunned, and the entertainment world hasn't stopped talking since. Tonight, we're diving deep into the explosive showdown between Sylvester Stallone and Jimmy Kimmel, a moment that redefined what a celebrity interview could become. But before we unpack this jaw-dropping confrontation, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Do you think Kimmel crossed the line, or was Stallone being too sensitive? You're going to want to hear every word of what went down. Studio 6A was electric that night. The crowd buzzed with anticipation as Sylvester Stallone entered the stage, promoting his latest directorial project. He looked relaxed, composed, and ready to talk shop. Just another night in front of the cameras. Phones were raised, cheers rang out. Jimmy Kimmel flashed his signature smirk. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the one and only Sylvester Stallone." Stallone waved warmly. That famous charm, the same one that made Rocky a household name, filled the room. He settled into the guest chair with the ease of a seasoned pro, fully expecting a light-hearted conversation. And then came the curveball. "Sly, great to have you here," Kimmel began. "But seriously, don't you ever get tired of playing the same character over and over again? Rocky Rambo, isn't it all just different versions of the same guy?" The room stiffened. Not exactly the warm welcome Stallone or anyone anticipated. Stallone offered a practiced smile. "Well, Jimmy, each film brought something different. Rocky was never just about boxing, it was about the human spirit, about getting back up. But come on, how many times can you reinvent the guy who talks funny and punches things? Don't the slurred speech patterns get exhausting after a while?" The laughter died. This wasn't playful teasing. It was pointed, and it hit a nerve. Stallone's expression tightened. "My speech is the result of a facial nerve injury from birth," he said calmly. "It's not something I put on for a role." "Oh, come on, Sly," Kimmel chuckled, reclining in his chair. "We've all heard those early interviews. You used to speak totally normally before you became, well, this version of yourself." That's when the energy in the room shifted. Stallone leaned forward, his voice steady and serious. "This version of myself. Jimmy, I'm not playing a part. This is who I am. And honestly, I'm not sure why you're taking this tone tonight." "What tone?" Kimmel replied with faux innocence, eyes glinting with mischief. "I'm just asking what everyone's thinking. Let's not pretend Hollywood isn't built on personas. You struck gold with Rocky, but haven't you spent the last 40 years trying to bottle that lightning again?" Now the tension was palpable. Stallone took a breath. His voice dropped lower, more deliberate. "Jimmy, I came here to talk about storytelling. About the craft of filmmaking, not to be mocked, not to have my legacy boiled down to a punchline." Kimmel laughed again, sharper this time. "Sly, this is late-night television. If you can't take a few hard questions, maybe stick to action. Movies where the dialogue isn't exactly Shakespeare, right?" That was the breaking point. The audience sat frozen. Stallone's publicist looked horrified. Producers gestured frantically from offstage, but Jimmy Kimmel, he was soaking it in. And then Stallone stood. "You know what, Jimmy?" he said, his voice carrying the quiet thunder of a man who's seen it all. "I've been in this business for decades. I've worked with the best. I've fought for every inch of my career. And yeah, some people build others up and some tear them down just to feel taller. I know which kind of man I want to be." Kimmel kept smiling, but the venom was unmistakable. "So what? You're saying I'm the bad guy for doing my job? Sorry, Slyna, all of us can coast on nostalgia. Some of us actually have to be funny every night." Stallone stared him down. Then, quietly, with no theatrics, no final quip, he walked off set. And just like that, the interview was over. No one clapped, no one cheered. The silence was louder than anything said on that stage. Stallone's voice rose. No longer the measured tone of a guest playing nice. "I've written, directed, and starred in films that have inspired millions," he said, steady but firm. "I've created characters that represent hope, grit, the belief that no one is beyond redemption." He leaned forward, eyes locked on Kimmel. "So tell me, Jimmy, what have you created, besides a platform to mock people who've actually done something with their lives?" The audience froze. No laughter, no clapping. Just silence, the kind that fills a room when something real breaks through the performance. Even Kimmel's band shifted uncomfortably. His sidekick sank back in his chair, suddenly unsure if this was comedy or catastrophe. Kimmel blinked, then smirked, masking discomfort with forced sarcasm. "Well," he said with faux sweetness, "I've created a show that gives washed-up action stars a place to pretend they still matter. That counts for something, doesn't it?" Stallone stood, slowly, deliberately. His movement alone sent a wave of unease through the studio. "I think we're done here, Jimmy." "Oh, come on, Sly," Kimmel called after him, still clinging to the illusion that he was in control. "Don't be so sensitive. It's all in good fun. Can't the great Sylvester Stallone take a joke?" Stallone stopped, turned, and faced him head-on. The room was dead silent, so still you could hear the hum of the studio lights. Then came Stallone's response. "A joke supposed to be funny, Jimmy. What you're doing, that's not comedy, it's cruelty. And I don't have to sit here and let you dress it up as entertainment." The words landed like a punch, and for the first time, Kimmel's ever-present grin faltered. Not gone, but cracked. Just enough to show something brittle underneath. He laughed again, nervous now, hollow. "Cruelty," he scoffed. "Sly, this is how late night works. We poke fun, we get a few laughs, and everyone goes home happy. Don't turn this into some melodrama." Stallone's voice was quiet, but the room seemed to shrink around him. "Then explain it to me," he said. "Because from where I'm standing, or rather, where I was sitting, it felt like you brought me here with one goal, to humiliate me for a few cheap laughs." Kimmel's laugh this time was high and tight. "Humiliate you? Please, you're Sylvester Stallone. You're bulletproof. What's a few jokes from a talk show host going to do to the guy who went toe-to-toe with Apollo Creed?" "Apollo Creed," Stallone replied evenly, "was a character, played by an actor who became one of my closest friends. We weren't mocking each other, we were telling a story about respect, about finding common ground, even with your opponent, then with surgical precision. But you wouldn't understand that, because you don't know the difference between conflict that builds something and conflict that just destroys." Cameras zoomed in, the control room scrambled. This wasn't the kind of segment they could edit cleanly. This was lightning raw and unscripted. Kimmel leaned forward, trying to claw back control. "Look, Sly, you're taking this way too seriously. My job is to be provocative, to ask the questions others are too polite to ask. If that makes me the bad guy, so be it." "The questions others are too polite to ask," Stallone repeated, his voice dropping an octave. "Or maybe the questions decent people are too respectful to ask. There's a difference, Jimmy, in the fact that you don't see it. That tells me everything I need to know about who you really are." Kimmel's persona was cracking. The grinning host was still there, but thinner now, flickering under pressure. "Who I really am," he fired back, the edge showing. "That's rich coming from a guy who's played the same character for 40 years. At least I'm honest about who I am." Stallone laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "Honest? You want to talk about honesty?" He took a step closer to the desk. "Your producers told my team this was going to be a standard interview, that you were a fan, that we'd talk about my journey as a director, a writer. Was any of that true, Jimmy? Or was this ambush always the plan?" That last question hit its mark. Kimmel's eyes darted just for a second, toward his producers in the wings. And in that second, the truth was obvious to everyone watching. "We always adjust the interview depending on how things flow," Kimmel said, grasping for footing. "That's live television for you." Stallone didn't budge. His voice cut through the excuse like a blade. "That's not an answer, Jimmy. Did you plan this? Did you sit in a meeting and decide tonight was the night you'd tear down Sylvester Stallone for a few viral clips?" Kimmel snapped. The charm vanished. "I don't need to tear anyone down for ratings," he shot back. "My show does just fine, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend that everything you touch turns to gold. Just because you wrote a movie about a boxer 40 years ago." Stallone didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "There it is," he said softly, but the quiet conviction in his words echoed through every corner of the studio. "That's the real Jimmy Kimmel, not the goofy, harmless act, not the late-night nice guy, but the bitter man who can't stand that someone else created something that meant something." The audience sat frozen, no laughter, no applause, just the hum of silence. Even the band had gone still. Kimmel's sidekick stared at the floor. "Jealous," Kimmel repeated, his voice cracking just slightly. "Of what?" "Your endless sequels. Your mumbling, tough guy routine. Your recycled movies with new names. You keep coming back to that, Stallone said calmly. The sequels, the voice, the repetition. It really eats at you, doesn't it? That I found something that resonated with people and I built on it, that I didn't just talk about legacy. I made one. Kimmel rolled his eyes, but he was shifting in his seat now. His hands moved too much. Audiences deserve better, he said, trying to recover. They deserve more than the same formula over and over, do they? Stallone asked. Or, do you think you deserve better? Because that's what this is really about, isn't it? He took a step forward, not aggressive, just certain. You've spent years making jokes about other people's work, other people's achievements. But what have you created, Jimmy? Stallone's words fell like hammers. What's your Rocky? What's your Rambo? What story have you told that made someone believe they weren't worthless, that made them get back up after life knocked them down? Kimmel opened his mouth then, closed it. For the first time that night, he had nothing. Stallone didn't let up. You know what you've built? A platform for cynicism. A place where tearing people down passes for comedy, where mockery is treated like insight. That's not fair, Kimmel said, weak now, his voice hollow. Isn't it? Stallone challenged. Then explain why you mocked a speech impediment I was born with. Explain why you thought it was funny to dismiss for decades of storytelling as one character in different costumes. Explain why you thought ambushing a guest was entertainment. Kimmel's face was red, embarrassed, angry, maybe both. I was just trying to have a real conversation, he muttered. Something deeper than the usual promo junk. No. Jimmy, Stallone said, stepping back. You were trying to humiliate me, and the only reason you're scrambling now is because it didn't work. You thought I'd laugh along with you, that I'd sit here and take it, because that's what guests usually do. He paused, let the silence speak. But I'm not most guests, am I? The audience didn't move. Not a breath, not a shuffle. Even the cameras seemed quieter now, locked on the two men like witnesses to something real. Stallone's voice lowered, but it grew more powerful with every word. You know what the real tragedy is? He asked. You are funny, Jimmy. I've seen the clips. You're smart. You used to bring people joy. But somewhere along the way, you decided cruelty was easier than creativity. That tearing down was easier than building up. Kimmel sat frozen, unable to look away. I don't have to listen to this, he finally said. But he didn't move. No, Stallone replied. You don't, but maybe you should. He turned. To the audience, no eyes scanning the crowd, not accusing, but reminding, because in front of all these people, your fans, your crew, you've got a choice. You can keep chasing controversy for clicks, or you can remember why you got into this in the first place. For the first time all night, Jimmy Kimmel was quiet. No comebacks, no jokes. Just a flicker of something real behind the eyes. Vulnerability, regret, truth, and the camera captured all of it. But then, like a switch flipping, Kimmel's expression changed. As if remembering the cameras, the crowd, and the role he was supposed to play, the mask snapped back into place. Well, this has been enlightening, he sneered, sarcasm dripping from every word. Thanks for the life lesson, Sly. I'm sure the audience really appreciated the lecture. And just like that, any chance of redemption, any hope this might end in mutual respect, eyed on the spot. Stallone stared at him. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with something deeper than anger. Disappointment. You know what? Jimmy, I actually feel sorry for you. Kimmel barked, a laugh bitter forced. That's rich. The guy who peaked in the 70s feels sorry for me. I feel sorry, Stallone said evenly, because you had a chance here tonight. A chance most people would kill for. A chance to show grace, maturity, maybe even decency. But instead, you doubled down on cruelty. The studio was silent, not the kind of silence you planned for. This was uneasy, raw. Some audience members looked away. Others leaned forward, riveted. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was a reckoning. Kimmel's voice spiked, desperate to claw back ground. You want to know what I think? He said. I think you came on here expecting everyone to bow down just because you're Sylvester Stallone. Well, newsflash, Palthis isn't the 80s anymore. Your tough guy act doesn't work on everyone. Stallone smiled for the first time all night, but there was nothing warm about it. My tough guy act, he echoed. Jimmy, this isn't an act. This is me refusing to let you treat me like garbage for your audience's amusement. Our audience, Kimmel corrected, quickly. They came here to see both of us. No, Stallone replied coldly. They came to see you interview me. They expected professionalism, substance, maybe even respect. Instead, they got a circus. One you created. He turned to the crowd, then back at Kimmel. Look at them, Jimmy. Really look. Kimmel glanced toward the audience, and what he saw stunned him. There were no grins, no clapping, only discomfort, confusion, even disappointment. They weren't watching a funny take. They were watching a man reveal an uglier version of himself than anyone expected. They're not laughing, Jimmy, Stallone said. They're not cheering your zingers. They're realizing that the man they welcomed into their homes every night, may not be the man they thought he was. You don't speak for my audience, Kimmel shot back, but there was no force behind it. It sounded like a man arguing with himself. You're right, Stallone nodded. I don't, but they can speak for themselves, can't they? He turned to the crowd again, now fully addressing them. How many of you came here tonight hoping to see your host ambush and humiliate his guest? Silence, not one hand. Some squirmed in their seats, others looked down. One or two shook their heads. How many of you are proud of what you witnessed here tonight? More silence. But this time, it thundered. Kimmel, single quotes as face paled. The weight of it, how this looked, how it felt, was finally hitting him. He tried to retreat, offering a soft, shaky olive branch. Look, maybe I came on a little strong. The words fell flat. Even he seemed to know it. Stallone raised his eyebrows. A little strong, he repeated, incredulous. Jimmy, you spent the last 20 minutes trying to tear down everything I've built. You mocked my speech. You ridiculed my legacy. You treated me like some washed-up has-been who should be grateful just to be on your couch. I was just doing my job, Kimmel muttered. No, Stallone said sharply. Your job is to entertain, not humiliate. To make people laugh, not make them uncomfortable. To be a host, not a bully. The cameras were still rolling, catching every beat of Kimmel's unraveling. The persona he'd spent years constructing was disintegrating live in real time. Wasn't done. You want to know what your job should be? He asked. Your job should be to lift people up, to celebrate achievement, to give guests a platform to share their stories, to inspire the people watching. Instead, you've built a coliseum, and every night you sit on your throne and decide who gets mocked and who gets spared. That's not what I do, Kimmel said, but the words were barely audible now. Isn't it? Stallone asked. Then tell me, why did you think tonight was a good idea? What did you think you'd gain by trying to tear me down? Kimmel opened his mouth, then shut it. For the first time in his career, he had nothing. No joke, no quip, no pivot. Was exposed, and everyone knew it. You can't explain it, can you? Stallone said, his voice quieter now, almost gentle. Because there is no noble reason. No, just doing your job excuse. You thought it'd make for good television. Offstage, producers waved frantically, signaling for a commercial. But it was too late. The damage was done. But there was no salvaging it now. This had gone far beyond late-night TV. I think we should go to commercial, Kimmel muttered, glancing offstage like a man hoping for rescue. No, Stallone said, firm and unshakable. We're not. Cutting to commercial, we're finishing this conversation because your audience deserves to see how this ends. They deserve to see if you're capable of owning what you've done. Owning what? He snapped. Doing my show the same way I've always done it. No, Stallone shot back, for ambushing a guest, for trying to humiliate someone who came here in good faith, for turning what should have been a celebration of creativity into a public execution. The words hit like a weight to the chest. Kimmel's posture slumped. His armor cracked. You're right, he said, barely above a whisper. So quiet, the audience leaned in to hear it. What was that? Stallone asked. You're right, Kimmel repeated louder. I was wrong. I planned this. I thought it would be funny to take you down a peg. I thought the audience would love it. The confession floated in the air like a guilty verdict. Some in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. A few even booed softly but unmistakably. Why? Stallone asked simply. Kimmel hesitated. Then the truth emerged in a voice stripped of showmanship. Because I'm tired of just making jokes about other people's success. Because I wanted to prove I could take down someone. Untouchable, because I'm jealous of what you've accomplished. Silence. It was the most honest thing Jimmy Kimmel had said all night. There it is, Stallone said, his voice gentler. Now, that wasn't so hard, was it? I'm sorry, Kimmel said Dan this time. He meant it. I'm sorry to you, and I'm sorry to everyone who had to watch this. Stallone studied him. Then, slowly, he sat back down. Apology. Accepted, Jimmy. But here's the thing. Saying sorry isn't enough. You need to do better. You need to be better. Because you've got a platform that reaches millions. You can make them laugh. You can make them think. You can make them feel better about themselves and this world. Don't waste that power on cheap shots and clickbait controversy. Kimmel nodded, unable to speak. Stallone stood again, but this time the energy was different. No anger, just quiet finality. He turned and began walking toward the edge of the set. Stallone paused. Turned. Thank you, Kimmel said simply. Behind him sat a studio full of people who had just witnessed something unforgettable, something unscripted, something real. It wasn't the show they came for. It was something more, a masterclass in character, a lesson in dignity. Proof that standing up for yourself doesn't have to come with rage. It can come with grace. As the cameras finally stopped rolling, the audience sat frozen in their seats, processing. They had come for laughs, but they left with something far more valuable, a reminder of what integrity looks like and why it matters. So there you have it. The night Sylvester Stallone walked off Jimmy Kimmel live. Not in defeat, but in quiet, undeniable triumph. Could you have handled that moment the way Sly did? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more stories Hollywood would rather keep buried, you know what to do? Subscribe, because we're just getting started.